Should Amol Palekar, one of India's finest actors and filmmakers, have been asked to shut up by members of the National Gallery of Modern Art in Mumbai when he made critical remarks about the functioning of the NGA during a speech he was invited for? Who has the right to censor what Mr Palekar wanted to say? Does the government or its functionaries decide what can and cannot be said at an event at the National Gallery of Modern Art? These are just some of the questions that have emerged after Palekar was censored midway through his talk. Video of that has emerged.
13th November, another disastrous decision was apparently taken, namely all future exhibitions. Sorry?
So, this is not needed at this moment, I'm sorry.
What is it?
The function is about Prabhakar Barve, we just stick to that, I'm sorry.
Yes, I am relating to Prabhakar Barve only.
I'm sorry sir, you have to stop this.
Are you asking me not to speak? You have invited me to speak.
I've invited to speak of Barve, Prabhakar Barve sir.
Recently, I'll just remind, most of you may be knowing this incident. Nayantara Sehgal was invited to speak, and at last minute that invitation was withdrawn because what she was going to speak was slightly critical of the situation around us. Are we creating the same situation here? You're asking me not to speak?
No.
I will not speak.
So this is about Prabhakar Barve. It's not
I am speaking about Prabhakar Barve.
So we just stick to that. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying don't speak about something. I'm just saying let's stick and talk about Barve. That's all I'm saying.
Silenced. Ironically, while he was speaking about the freedom of speech and curbs on institutions, noted actor filmmaker Amol Palekar was interrupted while speaking at the National Gallery of Modern Art in Mumbai at an event to remember artist Prabhakar Barve.
I just asked him, okay, are you asking me to stop? Are you censoring my speech? But when Jaisal kept saying, she was the one who invited me, she's the curator, so although she is so much junior, I respected that position and I therefore said, okay, I will conclude.
The organizers insist they were not curbing his right to free speech.
I respect his views and we have no opposition to his views. But at the same time, the evening was dedicated to an artist who had not been celebrated for 24 years. So the idea was just to bring him back to talk about the artist who is being represented and respect him. That was it, nothing else.
I requested him, please speak about Barve. We all are here to listen from you about Barve. That's all.
Do you still stand by your stand?
Yes, I still stand.
There have been angry reactions from many in the opposition. Congress, Samajwadi Party, AAP and Left. Although the organizers at the National Gallery of Modern Art believe that the points raised by Amol Palekar were right, they still think that the timing of Amol Palekar was wrong. But the larger question still remains that whether the manner in which he was interrupted, was it justifiable or not. In Mumbai, this is Purva Chitnis for NDTV.
Well, joining us now, Mr. Amol Palekar, for this exclusive interview. Sir, thank you very much for speaking to us. The point that the organizers tried to make was that, you were invited for a particular event and you chose not to speak about it. Instead, you decided to go off on a tangent. That's their argument. We all endorse freedom of speech. But how would you respond to what they are saying?
Very simple, Sean. Sorry. I was there to celebrate Prabhakar Barve's. I'm getting a lot of feedback, so let me get adjusted to this.
Yeah, carry on, yeah.
I was there at the retrospective of Prabhakar Barve's being celebrated at NGMA. Now, NGMA is a very premier institute and which we all respect the sanctity of that institute, and Prabhakar Barve, such a senior artist, internationally renowned artist, his retrospective being celebrated there after 25 years, 24 years of his demise at the NGMA, I thought it was a wonderful occasion to be a part of that. Now, I started speaking about Barve. I in fact spoke about his art. I spoke the finer nuances of his art, what impresses me. Then I also shared my experiences with him, which were wonderful. And then I said that this is a historic event. Historic in more than one sense. One is that we are celebrating after 24 years, there aaye durust aaye, but nonetheless we are celebrating it today. And the second part of the historic event was that this is being celebrated at the NGMA, and all the 5 floors of NGMA are available for this retrospective, which is probably going to be the last time that such an event will be held, because what had transpired and what we were getting disturbed, I was being told by many artists, young people, all from every corner, and the changes that have taken place at the NGMA. So I came from there to this historic part of this, that probably this is the last time that such a retrospective will be held. Now, when I started talking about this, and
Yes.
when I started talking of all the arbitrary decisions which were taken by the director, management and the NGMA, then the problem started, and they said, no, don't speak about this, speak only about Barve. I was to speak about Barve at the NGMA being celebrated, his work. So how is it relevant, or how is it out of question? I
Right.
fail to understand even
No, but
today.
sir, I think the larger issue, the larger issue is of censorship. The larger issue is that there were functionaries over there at the National Gallery of Modern Art who essentially told you to shut up. A lot of people find that deeply offensive. Do you believe that this is because the National Gallery of Modern Art is now controlled by the government, and therefore there are things that you can say and what you cannot say, there are things that you can show and that you cannot show, and that you were in a sense a victim to a very sad reality?
In fact, that's what I was talking about, that the system at the NGMA was, there was an advisory committee which consists of artists, art lovers, patrons from Mumbai. And they had taken a decision, and which decision was followed during their tenure, and accordingly Barve's retrospective, Mehli Gobai's retrospective and Sudhir Patwardhan's retrospective were confirmed by the committee, approved by the committee, and even the dates were allotted to these exhibitions. Now the new policy, as they say, new policy said that no, you cannot have all 3, you can have only Barve, and 2 were cancelled under the new policy. And the under new policy, what was more disturbing was that only the top floor, that is called the dome, will be available now for outside exhibitions. All the 4 stories of NGMA will now display whatever is in collection of NGMA, and which means that no new exhibitions, no new talent will be given all this space, which is shocking and disturbing. Or even a senior artist like Gobai and Sudhir Patwardhan, they need all that space. Mehli Gobai's exhibition was supposed to have more than 300
But
artworks.
sir, I see
Now,
what you're saying, but
300 artworks,
I
you
just
cannot
wanted to get
restrict.
Sure, I wanted to get one more view from you. You know, you have written what you had written in that speech, and which you weren't allowed to actually say in its entirety, I found very interesting. You said, you wrote, and I quote, "This sea of freedom is receding day by day, gradually but incessantly. What are we silent about?" You've spoken about a war against humanities. That's something that disturbs you. on how this control over the NGMA, the National Gallery of Modern Art, which is the sacrosanct venue of artistic expression and writing of diverse art, is a casualty. It's the most recent casualty in this war against humanities. Is this what a part of a larger process at shutting up freedoms? We see this in films, we see this now in art galleries, we see this against authors. Is this part of something which is fundamentally not what it should be to be an Indian?
Absolutely. I felt terribly disturbed by this, and I felt more disturbed by how they tried to stop me, which was, disturbing is a very a mild term I am using. I was terribly disturbed.
All right. And so is it also shocking for you that nobody in the audience actually backed you at that stage when you were being so actively interrupted?
That was another sad part of it, that though after I concluded there was a tremendous applause from the audience and they conveyed that they were with me, but I did feel sad that not even one of them stood up and said that let Mr. Palekar talk. Don't interrupt him. That was a sad part of it, the whole process, whole evening. My point is very simple.
Yes.
I was not briefed earlier that what am I not supposed to speak about.
No, but I don't think anybody can brief you on what you can and cannot say.
You told me
I think that's the larger issue. I don't think anybody can brief you on what you can and cannot say.
I am ready to give. I am ready to give that much of a leeway that when she invited me, if she had to tell me that you should speak only about this and not about this, and I would have said thank you so much, I don't want to come.
All right.
No
Fair
such
enough.
thing had happened, and then when I start speaking, and I also start speaking only about relevant things.
Right.
I wasn't talking about irrelevant
things over there.
I wasn't
Mr.
talking
Palekar, I
about
need to,
Chowpatty
Mr. Palekar,
or something like
I hear
that.
you
was talking
completely about this,
NGMA.
and I feel deeply moved by what you'd written in that speech, and which we never got to hear either. And I'd like to thank you very much for speaking to us this evening. But I'm going to continue this, in fact, with Hemant Karnik, a writer over there, and the CPM leader Fuad Halim joins us as well. Hemant Karnik, what gives anybody the right to tell Amol Palekar to shut up?
In the first place, I don't like the way it's being put, that he was not asked to shut up. He definitely was interrupted.
Okay, those words weren't
And
used, but that's effectively what it meant.
Really, no, see, when you say shut up or he was snubbed, it conveys an entirely different meaning altogether.
How was he not snubbed, sir? We've
as
seen
if
the video.
He was insulted. He was interrupted. Definitely he was interrupted. Which was, in hindsight, it appears to be wrong. Well, right. But there were reasons why he was interrupted. See, Jaisal Thakkar, the curator of the show, it was her passion to hold the show. The show occupied all the 5 floors of NGMA. As Palekar himself says, that probably this is the last show to occupy all the 5 floors of NGMA. And henceforth there may not be such shows. To go into the show, to watch the show would have been the best way to convince oneself why all the 5 floors should be dedicated to one single.
Okay, all right. I want to bring in Dr. Fuad Halim. Dr. Halim, how would you respond, Dr. Halim, to those who say that if Amol Palekar chose to express his concern that the NGMA would no longer be the same as it's been in the past, and therefore he wanted to say whatever he wanted to, what's wrong with that?
Well, it's very clear, if there is something that somebody is disagreeing about the functioning of the NGMA, the best place to actually voice that is the NGMA itself, and one has to keep in mind that the NGMA actually represents an artists conglomerate. So that is the platform on which artists voice themselves. They voice themselves in congruity with the government. They voice themselves having a difference of opinion with the government. And what was Amol Palekar after all saying? He was saying that the process that was continuing in the NGMA stands to be changed by this government, and he is not very comfortable with that idea. He was not raising flags. He was not sitting in a dharna. He was not raising a protest. He was making conversation. Now the very challenge to ideas being being expressed is what is coming across from the government side, and people who want to apologize and who are apologists for the officialdom. Now let's be very clear, artists have always had a very, very broad, what you call, opportunity to express themselves, and I think so the very idea that the official artists platform is unavailable to what you call, to put forward ideas that are in disagreement with the government itself sends a very, very strong signal as to what the government thinks how these platforms should be used. So I think so the government is not only giving across the idea that they are not going to tolerate a difference of opinion, but they are also making sure that the governmental platforms will not be allowed for any sort of opinion which is at variance with the government, which I think so is telling us we are in a close to fascistic situation. Now, the second thing concerns me more because Amol Palekar clearly mentions that the audience was also stifled. So I think so this attitude that the government is actually portraying is actually percolated down significantly to the people who are there, because I would expect people at the NGMA audience would be people who have been well placed, who have a broad understanding, who come from cultured backgrounds, and who would book no tolerance to anybody trying to cut down the democratic rights of somebody of Amol Palekar's caliber. So I think so it's unfortunate at all ends.
1 second, Mr. Halim, I'm running out of time. One final question for Mr. Karnik. In that speech, which we couldn't entirely hear, he says, on the 13th of November 2018, another disastrous decision was apparently taken, namely all exhibitions of artworks not from the NGMA's own collection would be allotted only 1/6 of the area in NGMA Mumbai. This is something which hurt him, and he wanted to talk about it. Why was he interrupted?
Right. See, it's being represented here that there are two parties involved, one supporting the freedom of expression and the other party opposing Amol Palekar is opposing the freedom of expression. That is not the case. I think, see, the last artist committee, all of them, when they came to know about this central government decision, had written emails to the central government protesting their decision. Moreover, this decision of restricting the artist exhibition only to the dome part was taken because NGMA wanted to display its own collection in the remaining portion. What the last committee proposed is that instead of having only the dome part for the artist, let it be 50-50. Now, if you consider this, then this becomes an administrative decision. It's not simply disallowing all artists to display their work at all. This is not the case. Everybody supports freedom of expression. Everybody supports artists' right to display what should be displayed in galleries and places like NGMA. So there is no disagreement here on that issue.
One way or the other, I think this has been seen as an effort where one of India's finest, Amol Palekar, was not allowed to speak his mind, and I think there was more than an element of insult which he felt. I don't think he would have gone and held a press conference if he didn't feel insulted, if two young people over there suddenly told him not to say something which he didn't want to. I'd like to thank both of you very much for joining us at this